Now, I am honored to welcome to the stage a fellow fighter in this movement, a leading light of moral clarity and a living testament to the idea that, as she once said herself, hope is not something that you have, hope is something that you create. She inspires so many of us to believe what we do deserve health care, we do deserve a healthy planet, we do deserve dignity in this life, and we can have it if we fight for it. And she knows the right side of history when she sees this. Let's give a warm Iowa welcome to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Hello, Iowa! What's good, Coralville? How's everybody doing tonight? Are you all ready for the revolution? I sure am. I'm so thankful to be here tonight. Thank you, everybody, for driving, for coming out, for making sure that we're gathered here in this evening, because we're here to queue up to transform this country and nothing less than that. This is my first visit. Gracias! This is my first trip to Iowa ever in my entire life. And we landed, gracias, otra vez, eso. And we landed, and we got a huge warm welcome of the largest rally of the presidential cycle down in Council Bluffs in Iowa. And it was such an incredible evening, and then just this morning we turned out another 2,000 people in Des Moines for the climate summit. And now tonight we're looking at probably around another 2,000, 6,000 people in about 24 hours that we've rallied across the state. It's been such an incredible experience, and having this be my first time in Iowa, I've learned and experienced firsthand the incredible warmth and kindness that there is in this state. Just this morning, actually, I went out and I knocked doors. Because that's the work, okay? And I was out knocking doors and in Des Moines, and it was really amazing. First of all, having knocked a lot of doors in New York City, knocking doors in Iowa is a much nicer thing. In New York, they're like, I don't want to change my cable. Like, leave me alone. But in Iowa, you know, you just knock on a door and people are just open for a conversation. It's really amazing, and it's beautiful, and it's a testament to the culture, the neighborly culture you all have here. And I think it's incredibly important, because building on that culture is what this campaign is all about. It's the kind of culture we're trying to transform within our country. It's a country of loving thy neighbor, a culture of loving thy neighbor, a politics of loving thy neighbor. And to me, that's what policies like Medicare for All are all about. It's about loving thy neighbor. To me, ending police brutality in America is loving thy neighbor. To me, ending a brutal policy of caging children and their parents is about loving thy neighbor, ending that policy. To me, a living wage is loving thy neighbor. And to me, a Green New Deal is loving thy neighbor, our children, and our planet. And what's incredible is that we're holding these record-breaking rallies just weeks after we held the largest rally of the entire presidential cycle in New York City, in Queens. And what that tells me is that we're onto something. What that tells me is that people are ready for a true political revolution in the United States. And I think what's important to really communicate with that, and what that means is that it's not a slogan. It's not a hashtag. We're talking about actually transforming the center of power in the United States to focus on the working class. And it's been so long that since we have done that people don't even think it's possible. That's how long it's been. But this is not the first time we're trying to do this. We have been here before. We have mobilized our entire workforce and our entire economy before. We have fought for civil rights before. We have liberated and pursued and fought for marriage equality before. And I know it seems impossible, but it is not. In fact, it is more within our reach than it has ever been. At that rally in Queens, I was talking to folks, and one of the things that I mentioned was that it was just last February that I was waitressing at a taco joint in downtown Manhattan. It was just last February. And no one would have thought that this whole situation was possible. I didn't, years ago, I didn't even think it was possible. I remember always trying to find people like me anywhere with any sort of decision-making power. People that had worked the jobs that I had worked, people who had working parents that I had had, people that lacked any sort of special connection or social influence, being in charge or having a voice or saying anything. And I remember just not really seeing it and wondering if it was even possible. And for a while, I felt like I got jaded about our political system. For a while, I just felt this is a show. This is theater, and that our politics don't actually work for us. And what I was mentioning earlier today about the climate summit is that politics at its best is about love, as I mentioned. And one of the reasons I think people get so cynical is because we're tired of having our heart broken all the time. And so what happens when your heart gets broken over and over and over again? You just say, opt out, like I'm over this. Like I'm done with men or women or people, like I'm over it. You opt out. But what happens? You hold on. You hold on to that darkness. That doesn't go away. You hold on to that anger. You hold on to that resentment. You just keep it inside. And that's what's happened in our political process. That's what's happened to our sense of power. But the moment that turned around for me was when I decided to do something again. When I decided to knock on a door or go to a Black Lives Matter protest or head to Standing Rock or go to the border, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. And that is what a politics of love is all about. Because all of these issues are bigger than us individually. And because these problems are bigger than us, because these problems are universal, our solutions must be universal too. You know, one of the questions and one of the questions that we have is, that I've often gotten is, why Bernie? Why have you endorsed Senator Sanders? Why Bernie? And for me, one of the reasons my why Bernie, I think everyone's why Bernie is a little different. Everyone's why Bernie is a little different because we all bring our personal stories here. We all have different life stories. For me, my why Bernie is because when I was born and my parents were expecting myself and my brother, they turned to Planned Parenthood in order to get prenatal services. And Bernie was fighting for me then. My why Bernie is because when I was a kid and my parents were struggling to be on health insurance, and my mom was cleaning houses, and my dad was trying to start a business, when my parents struggled with being able to have health insurance, let alone me, Bernie was fighting for them. Bernie was fighting for us. My why Bernie is because when I started reading the climate science and felt and saw that we almost acted in 1989, the year I was born, we almost acted and we didn't. And now our seas are rising, our droughts are expanding, our crops are reducing in their nutrient density. When I started reading that, and I felt the profound betrayal of the failure of political leadership then, and I look at what Bernie was doing, Bernie was fighting for us. He fought for me when I didn't have health care as a waitress. He fought for me when I graduated with $20,000, over $20,000 in student debt. He fought for me when I wasn't making a living wage. And so my why Bernie is because since he has fought for me, I want to fight for him. Because there's a lot of talk in this cycle about unity. What does that mean? I don't know. What I do know is what solidarity means. Solidarity means fight for someone you don't know. Bernie Sanders did not know when he was doing those things that he was fighting for me. He didn't know that, but he knew what he was fighting for. And now we want to fight for people we don't know too. That's what we have to do in this moment. Because people can unify under anything, really. You can unify, you can say like, let's unify under what have you, this, that, or the other. But solidarity means we're going to fight for each other. Solidarity is Medicare for all. If you don't have insurance, I don't want it. If you don't have insurance, I don't want this system that we have. It's a rejection of this system. And I don't. Solidarity means if you're not making a living wage, I don't want a system that accepts being paid people less than a living wage. Solidarity means that if children and immigrants are being caged at our border, we can dismantle the systems that put them there. That's what solidarity means. And to all the folks who say none of these things are possible, you have to understand the impossibility and the irrationality of the system we have today. How is it possible that in the richest nation in the world, Millions of people are too poor to live. How is that possible? That is what is impossible and unacceptable to me for a moral nation. How is it possible? How is it possible that when so many people are talking about unemployment, or rather that there are too many jobs, we can't fill them, that we reject people who are trying to come here and build a better life? That is impossible in a moral nation. How are we supposed to believe that in the wealthiest nation in the world, people struggle to keep a home? That is what is impossible. And so it's not that what we're fighting for is unreasonable. It's that people with limited political imagination cannot imagine an America that provides for working people. And that's not our fault, it's theirs. Because there is more than enough. And frankly, just because someone else cannot imagine a political system that's not run by billionaires doesn't mean we shouldn't have a political system that's run by working people. It's funny to me when we talk about a Green New Deal and people say, this is too ambitious, this is too big. It's almost as though they can't imagine us valuing anything else more in our budget than war. It's that they can't imagine an America that values education as much as it values war, that values saving our planet as much as it values war. It's almost as though folks can't imagine a country that believes that saving our planet is more valuable than a Wall Street bank bailout. Because we paid for that just fine. I think about some of our largest expenditures as a government and as a country, and they happened with the snap of a finger. You ever notice that? $2.1 trillion tax cut for billionaires and corporations happened like that, overnight. Wasn't that hard, was it? A multi-billion-dollar bank bailout to help reward the CEOs that took our homes away happened like that. That happened like that. So why is it that we need to wait 3 generations to guarantee health care to all Americans? Why is it that we have to be told that we need to wait until it's too late to act on climate change? And so we're being had. We're being had because all of this gaslighting in our political system is not true. But I want people to realize how important this moment is right now. When I was first running for office, and I was, I kept a Trader Joe's bag. I put all of my canvassing materials in there. I put my clipboards and my little postcards that I had made, and I would tuck it behind the bar, and I'd work my shift, and then I'd grab my bag, change out of my clothes, and take a train out to Queens and do house parties with people and talk to people, 5 people at a time. And it was crazy. Only like a mad person would do this. Like, I don't know why, what overcame me. But, and I would go 5 people at a time to living rooms for months. And I go to a living room and there'd be 5 people in that living room, and I'd be telling them that actually we can unseat one of the most powerful members of the Democratic Party from our home. And people said, you were crazy. And I said, it's not crazy for us to fight for ourselves and stand up for ourselves. So people have been telling us that we're nuts forever, and we have been accomplishing the impossible for a long time. This movement has been accomplishing the impossible the whole time. Because in this last century, we've electrified this country, literally. We have to think about things like the Tennessee Valley Authority. And we go dig back. And when people try to accuse us of going too far left, we're not pushing the party left. We are bringing the party home. It's time that we become the party of FDR again. It's time for us to become the party of the Civil Rights Act again. It's time for us to become the party that fights for queer liberation again. An anti-war party, a party that establishes peace and prosperity. That's the party I want to be again, and I want to go back home. That's what I want to do. And in order for us to go back home, we cannot go back home alone. We have to go back home together. That means we need to go back home with feminists. That means we have to go back home with the labor movement. That means we have to go back home with Black Lives Matter, go back home with the immigration movement. That means we have to go back home with the Fight for 15. That means we have to go back home. That's how we go back home. Solidarity means you fight for someone you don't know. That solidarity means you bring someone with you to caucus. But what I mean by that is not just literally, but figuratively. Because I want you to vote, and I want you to caucus for someone you don't know. That's what that means. It means that when you walk in that night, you're gonna fight for a community that you haven't fought for before. That means all of us have to grow. That means all of us are in the pursuit of self-development. Because we need to understand our interconnected struggle. I was on my way here to Iowa, and I was reading a lot about climate change. Soybean yields are set to cut 25% by 2050 if we don't do anything about this. Maize as well. Sea rises out in coastal cities are set to threaten every major coastal city by 2050 in some way, shape, or form. Internet servers are on our coasts, and when those sea levels rise, it's going to create systemic failures if we do nothing. So tell me what costs more, doing something about it or not doing something about it? And with that, we have to realize that this country we have, the way things are today, is a choice. We choose to live like this. Our systems, our political leadership, etc., we have chosen in the richest country in the world to allow people to die because they can't afford insulin. That's not an accident. That is a choice of policy and of structure, and we don't have to choose that anymore. But I need us to remember, we have to remember that this is not a show. This is not something that we watch. This is not something that we watch on television. We don't watch the polls. We don't observe a political race. We gotta be in it. We change the polls. We don't watch the polls, we change the polls. We bring people with us to caucus. And we talk to people who have never been engaged or involved before. In my race, we won because we expanded the electorate 68% over the last off-year midterm election. That's the work that we have to do. And that's the kind of stuff that people say is impossible. But when you fight for someone that you don't know, you can accomplish, and we can accomplish the impossible. So we need to stitch this together. And let me tell you, it's working. There wouldn't be 2,000 people in here tonight if it wasn't working. But our future is not something that is guaranteed to us. Our future is not guaranteed to us. The quality of our future is not guaranteed to us. It's something in this moment that we have to fight for. And we're not going to get a shot like this again. Not at this time, not in this way. So we need to go for it all. We need to go for it all, because 10% better is not much better at all. And so with that, I want to introduce to you my friend, a man that fought for all of us for so long, and now we're here in this moment to realize a vision of universality and solidarity. I'd like to introduce to you all Senator Bernie Sanders.